email address, marketing@iowaortho.com. That is marketing@iowaortho.com. We've got somebody standing by. Jaren's going to give those to me so we can read the answers as we get them. We're also going to utilize the YouTube comment box. Now, in order to do that, you've got to be logged into Gmail to do that option. So everybody get all gung-ho on their keyboards. We are going to record this broadcast. It's going to be available on our YouTube channel next week. So, without further ado, let's start talking here about osteoporosis. So I thought, as I was thinking today of what we're going to talk about, it's always good that everybody's on the same page what we're talking about. So what is osteoporosis? Well, osteoporosis in today's medical environment gets bandied around a few different ways. I hear people talk about their test results. They had a bone density test and they have osteoporosis. Well, that is a correct way to use osteoporosis. That typically means that there's about a 25% loss of the amount of bone that you should have had as a young person. And by young, that's somewhere between 20 for a woman and 30 for a man, somewhere in that neighborhood. And we have estimates as to how much bone we expect people to have during those time periods. Literally, osteoporosis means porous bone. It's a Greek-derived word. Well, I, again, don't necessarily treat pores in bones or holes in bones. So the definition that I typically use with my patients is osteoporosis really boils down to what is your risk of breaking something. And at the end of the day, that's a much more logical thing to think about. It works the same as your diabetes, your high blood pressure. We don't treat the disease, we try to reduce your risk from certain disease processes. So, we're going to use this term osteoporosis in that context. Now, the next thing I want everybody to be aware of is bones have a cycle of life. When you're born, you have not much bone. The bones that you have become calcified as you have more birthdays. Somewhere between mid to late teens until early adulthood is when you really build the most bone mass. And somewhere between 20 and 30 years old, you get what we call peak bone mass. Peak bone mass is essentially the point in your life that you have the most bone that you will ever have in your life. Now, we have a number of studies available to look at as to what constitutes criteria to make you have peak bone mass. There's an Australian study that I refer to back most often. And the thing that we look at that impacts peak bone mass is how healthy were you as a kid? What was your nutritional status? Were you anorexic, bulimic? How active were you? Bad news, couch potatoes as children who do this with their phones aren't going to build as much peak bone mass as those who were put outside to run and play all day. How many times do your heels hit the ground when you're running each day? There's a number of studies that say for children, we need about 300 heel strikes a day to achieve peak bone mass. And the last thing is, how much did you weigh? Little people don't build as much bone. And part of the reason for that is bones respond to stress. They are normally bearing weight. And we know that there's somewhat of a magical number in osteoporosis, and that number is somewhere in the neighborhood of 127 pounds. Kids under 127 pounds are more likely to not develop as much bone as what we would consider to be an average amount of bone for peak bone mass. Now, that's important because after you hit peak bone mass, it is a slow roll down the mountainside for the rest of your life. After age approximately 20 for a lady, 30 for a man, you start losing bone faster than what you put it in. And then as you go through menopause, or for a man, as you start to lose testosterone, we will see accelerated bone loss. Now, how does that relate back to osteoporosis? Well, remember, osteoporosis is what is your risk of breaking something. And we know that if you have less bone, you have a higher risk of breaking something. So, more bone is always a good thing in our world. Now, how does that tie in with how do I prevent osteoporosis? Well, in a perfect world, what we would do is we would spend all of our effort on the young people to make sure that they were healthy, they were active, their heels hit the ground, and they weighed somewhere in the neighborhood of 130 pounds, give or take. Because to prevent osteoporosis as an adult, you need to have more bone as a child. Now, the same thing holds true as we age. A lot of these same factors play into how fast do I lose bone. Exercise, for example, weight-bearing activities, lifting weights, things like yoga that work on muscle strength but also work on balance. My patients will always tell you that I am the first one to admit nothing good happens if you fall. People should stay upright. Don't fall, it's bad. So, things that increase your ability to maintain balance, such as yoga, band exercises, weightlifting is great for your bones. Now, I also work in an orthopedic clinic and we deal with arthritis. So the reality is sometimes the best things we can do is walking on flat, level ground. That's not perfect for bones, but it is better than sitting in the couch watching the outside world go by. And whenever we talk about bone health, bones are connected to everything else. I firmly believe that how healthy your bones are should improve the quality of your life, should improve your longevity, and really should improve how well you enjoy life. A fracture is a devastating event, be it as a young person or an older person. Fractures often lead to other problems such as pain, loss of mobility, loss of independence, and death. So, activity is very, very important. Now, nutritional status is also important. And it's important not only for your bones, but also for a multitude of other things. Your diabetes, your high blood pressure, all of these things depend on how well you eat. People need a good variety of food. Life is short, you should enjoy it. Variety is the spice of life, and moderation often is the correct thing to do. People need proteins, they need carbohydrates, they need water intake, they need exercise. All of these things help keep blood sugars in check, help keep your bones healthy, helps with your blood pressure, helps with cardiovascular disease. And there's an intermingling of all of these disease states. How many times your heels hit the ground? Again, I don't want to see people sit and lift weights as their only activity. Those that are able should be up walking to some degree without falling. So consideration should be made if there are concerns about being a fall risk. Do you need an assistive device such as a cane, a walker, a walking stick? Do you need somebody to help you walk? We want to do all these things within the realm of safety for each individual person. And weight. Again, weight is important because as we age, bones continue to bear weight. And people that are under 127 pounds tend to develop arthritis more quickly, or osteoporosis more quickly, because the bones are not carrying as much weight as they were designed to carry. It doesn't mean that you should weigh 600 pounds, and it doesn't mean that you should weigh 40 pounds. Somewhere in the middle there If you are a small frame person, that doesn't mean that you need to gain 60 pounds so your bones are healthy. It means that that adds an additional risk onto your risk of breaking something in the future. An overall health status. As we age, the body requires a lot more maintenance. It's no different than the new car that you got. All you had to do was change the tires, put in some oil, and keep the gas filled up, and you were fine. But as you have the car for a few years, you need a little maintenance here and there to keep the car running in an optimal fashion. The same holds true with people. As we have more birthdays, there's some more things that we have to do for maintenance. Be it tending to your bones, your blood pressure, your heart, your diabetes, any other chronic medical disease that might creep up. We have to take care of those so things don't get out of control and you can enjoy life. So let's talk for a minute about risk of fracture. What things go into what is my risk of breaking something? Well, a sedentary lifestyle is certainly a risk factor because you don't bear weight. Poor nutrition. Diabetes tends to make bones soft. That increases your fracture risk. A smaller amount of bone. So people with less bone, again, have a higher risk of fracture. Smoking is very hard on the bones because smokers tend to develop relatively soft bones that don't heal very well if they fracture. Chronic kidney disease. There are certain medications such as Depo-Provera that are given to young people that have an impact on bones forever. So your health status, your health history all go into the equation of what is your risk of fracture. Now we're going to take just a short pause here for everyone to catch up. Send me some questions if you have some. I think everybody's fallen asleep. Okay, so let's go into some other things besides prevention of osteoporosis. Let's talk about how do we measure certain things in osteoporosis, like how do we measure bone mass? Bone mass testing is called bone density testing. The most common fashion of that is a test called a Dexa test. That is an old-fashioned radiation test that indirectly measures the amount of bone that you have. We typically look in your hip and take about 3 measurements out of your hip. And we look in your low back. We look at least 2 bones in your low back. Or we can look in your forearm. And what this test does, this test derives the amount of energy that was lost during that X-ray test and converts it to something called a T-score. And a T-score is something that was found through research looking at thousands and thousands of subjects to figure out what the average amount of bone would be for a young adult. And we measure, again, everything against how much bone you should have had as a young adult, because we consider that to be the perfect amount or the peak bone mass that you ever would have had in your life. There are other ways to measure bone mass. There's something called a Qualitative Ct or a Quantitative Ct. That is a CAT scan test that does a direct measurement of the amount of bone in your spine. It looks at a somewhat more accurate and a little bit different way. It tends to measure the bone, the holy bone on the inside of each of your spinal vertebrae. It provides a qualitative or quantitative amount of bone. It's somewhat more accurate in people with a lot of arthritis or certain underlying medical conditions. At Iowa Ortho, we utilize both of those technologies in order to maintain and assure that we have a very accurate measurement of the amount of bone that you have to help determine what your risk is, and if you undergo treatment with medications to make sure that the medications are working to increase the amount of bone that you have over time. There is also an ultrasound test that is recognized by the Food and Drug Administration that looks at the amount of bone that you have by ultrasound in your shin bone. And those are the three primary types of bone testing or bone density testing that are done in the United States today. Other things that we do to assess a person's risk for fracture. We look at medical history, so diabetes, high blood pressure, certain medications, rheumatoid arthritis, a disease called hyperparathyroidism, kidney disease, kidney stones. We look at previous cancers, chemotherapy or radiation. There's about 120 questions that we try to elicit whenever we interview somebody to figure out what their risk is. It is not just that bone density test. This is similar to having a 1,000-piece puzzle. If you look at each individual piece, you have no idea what the picture is, but if you put the puzzle together, and in my world that is a bone density test, blood work, history, fracture history, you can develop a picture that paints a risk factor of what is your risk for breaking something in the future. Now, I did mention blood tests. Things that we look at in blood. Calcium levels, that is the primary building block of bone. It's very important that you have adequate calcium supplies. We look at kidney function. We look at something called parathyroid hormone. We also look at vitamin D levels. Vitamin D is important in the transportation of calcium from the foods you eat up to the blood, and then getting it from the blood up to the bones. And there are other things that are associated with that that we look at in blood to make sure that that pathway to get calcium from your food into your bones is intact and working properly. We also look at things that will make you lose bone faster than what you should as you have more birthdays. Things like poor kidney function, over or underactive thyroid glands, liver disease, to name a few. All of those things are screened in order to make sure that we have a complete picture of what is your risk of having a fracture in the future. A typical evaluation for osteoporosis typically takes about an hour. Blood draw, we do a bone density test, come up and visit us in clinic, which typically, the clinic visit typically takes 30 to 45 minutes to go through an entire history, explain what's going on with your bone, talk about risk, and then talk about options of treatments to reduce your risk. Sometimes an option for treatment, if there's little risk, perhaps is nothing more than correcting a low vitamin D, which is done with over-the-counter supplements. Sometimes this might involve medications, and there are a number of medications that are used to treat osteoporosis. One of the things that we worry about also with bone health is bone health provides a snapshot of what your risk is on a given day. As you have more birthdays, just because of your age, your risk increases. This is not something that you should do once in a lifetime and never do it again. We tend to do bone density testing on a periodic basis, every 2 to 3 years initially, perhaps longer intervals than that based on what your risk and what your bone density is. By doing these over a period of time, not only can we tell on a given day what your risk appears to be, but we can tell how much is your risk increasing or decreasing as you have more birthdays. And that is often the optimal way to tell if treatment and exercise and nutrition are doing the things that we expect them to do, or if we need to reevaluate our plan to reduce your risk of fracture. Okay, has anybody got questions? This is a good point for questions. We'll have our question line open here for an hour or two. If you want to send questions in, we can address those. At this point, next week we will have another discussion regarding osteoporosis, how to reduce risk. Tune in next Thursday, May 28th at 1 o'clock Central Time. We'll talk about nutrition and the connection to osteoporosis and arthritis. You'll receive access to the webinar link 24 hours in advance, so make sure that you pre-register. Again, if you have questions, please feel free to email and we will address those next week. I want to thank everybody for attending today and have a great afternoon.